Welcome again to this week's Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Chi-Chen Lo. In the past decade also, Taiwan has successfully transformed itself from an authoritarian system into a true democracy. However, for most people, when we talk about democratization in Taiwan, they tend to only focus on the political reform. However, as a very important foundation and element of true democracy, judicial reform and judicial infrastructure should deserve equal attention. And apparently, a democracy cannot be sustainable without a rule of law and rule by law. But apparently, the democracy in Taiwan has nourished and developed for the past decade or so. How about judicial reform in Taiwan? And judicial reform in Taiwan not only focus on substance, symbolic terms, but also the substance. So that's why law-related education is very important in promoting such efforts. In today's program, we are very delighted to invite two experts in this field to share with us their views about the law-related education in Taiwan. Let's welcome our first guest, Professor at the Department of Civic Education and Leadership at National Taiwan Normal University. Professor Lin, welcome to our program.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here to talk about law-related education in Taiwan.
Also, we are inviting a lawyer and deputy director of the Center in Taipei, Mr. J.P. Chang. Mr. Chang, welcome to our program.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here to introduce law-related education with everyone.
Professor Lin, let me ask you a very simple question. I think for most viewers or even people in Taiwan, they have no idea about what it means by law-related education. What's the meaning of it?
I think law-related education had to be contrast with the law education. For the law education, which is aimed at training lawyers, legal professions.
That's right.
But law-related education is for the general public to have the basic idea of human rights or rule of law and so on.
So far, do you think that Taiwan has done a poor job or good job in promoting this kind of law-related education in Taiwan?
But as you mentioned, Taiwan has been transformed from an authoritarian regime into the true democracy. And in the old times, I think they also teach about law-related education, but which is based on the, I would say, the idea of fear rather than idea of right. That means they teach children you have to, but they didn't teach him or her how to protect his or her rights.
But apparently, the rule by law, seems to be there as a result of the legacy or relics of the authoritarian system. But the concept of rule of law is still very vague for many people. Mr. Zhang, do you think that's the case, that people do not really understand the meaning of rule of law?
I think so. In past decades, when we talk about law-related education, many people will invite legal professionals to school to deliver a speech about the law. But we know we use the statute of law.
That's right.
Statute law. Many legal professionals know a lot about the articles of the statute law. Statute law. So when a legal professional introduces the law-related education, they usually introduce the articles, but the articles are usually abstract and very difficult for the general public.
That's right.
So once general people begin to read the articles, they will forget the basic principle of the law.
That's right.
Or rule of law. So the basic value of the law usually not be emphasized in our law-related education field.
But who should be invited to teach this kind of law education? In addition to these kind of legal experts, or the so-called lawyers or even judges, who are the key promoters or teachers in teaching people about what it means by law?
I think in old times, teachers are not familiar with the ideas of law. So when they teach, I think mainly they teach about moral education rather than law-related education.
That's right.
For the lawyers who are trained by the legal profession, but they have no idea how to deliver the law idea for the children or the general public. teacher had to be the main deliverer, but supported by the lawyers.
That's right. But you mentioned earlier that in the old days, people think of law as a way of fear, but people should be more appreciative of what it means by law, by emphasizing the right, the right they have. What are the basic rights that people should understand when it comes to law-related education? Mr. Zhang.
In our way of education, we did not emphasize the right or application, but we emphasize the respect to each other. And if we respect to each other, and we can interact with a reasonable way, then I think everything could be a very good solution. And so we emphasize on the respect to each other and to interact with each other by a very reasonable attitude. That's our beginning. Based on this beginning, we then introduce what kind of rights you have or what kind of obligation you have. So I think the key point should not be the right or obligation.
But apparently, when we were kids, we are taught about only rights and obligation, responsibility. The new things that have been developed over the past few years about, rule of law or the law itself in Taiwan.
I think the maybe it's not. I think the idea of the rule of law or democracy is the main substance, but also the way to teach. How at the old times the teachers usually just instruct,
That's right.
and the pupils listened. But for the true democracy, teacher had to, as children had to be trained to speak out what they think, and so the teacher had to be more interactive with the students.
But as you mentioned, that the teachers themselves may not have understanding about law itself and the meaning of law itself. So the teachers may also need education as well. And is there any mechanism that our government or the NGOs are helping to educate the teachers when they are teaching our kids about law?
Yes, our main business is to teach teachers to teach their children. But I think we should be careful to select the correct materials. Because, as I mentioned, the legal professionals usually introduce the articles of statute law. But I think that's not the correct way to teach the teachers. We should select the basic value of the law, then explain by a very plain and simple way to introduce the abstract values or ideas to the teachers. And so in past 5 years, we learned a lot from the Center for Civic Education in California. We focus on this kind of ways to teach the teachers.
Materials later, but one very important issue here is that whether the society itself is receptive to the new ideas that we should teach our kids about law. As we know that over the past years, people in Taiwan began to be very appreciative about the teaching or education of human rights. Everybody say that it's very important to emphasize human rights, and people, even kids, know what kind of rights they have. But when it comes to law, I think for most people, it's very remote. It's very abstract, as you mentioned. Do you think that in Taiwan, the society in general began to appreciate the importance of teaching our kids about law itself?
Law is very important for everybody, because it protect and make an order for the whole society. So it's not a matter of the. I think also the human right is a part of the law.
That's right.
But in terms of law, when you mention about law, it's all kinds of laws. You have the labor laws, you have the customer protection law, civil law, criminal law. I think it's difficult for the law-related the right materials which is suitable for the understanding of different levels of the children. That's the main problem.
Are there any criticisms or any reflections about the materials we used in the old days when we are teaching our kids?
Once the teacher know about the materials, they think it's fun. But before that day, they think law is not fun.
That's right.
The material is fun because they pick many examples, true examples from the everyday lives of the students. They teach the value of the law, example of everyday life of the students. So I think it is successful because they did not introduce very abstract value first.
Is there any study being done with regard to people's understanding or the success of our law-related education for the past few years?
Not really, because for teachers, they just not very. They just have the they think law is difficult, and but when the law written or the material written into the children's textbook, they just don't know how to interpret, and.
So their training may not be good enough for them to teach our kids about law, right?
Yes. And so that's why we think maybe we can learn from other countries to see how to produce a material which is good for a certain age of the children.
Yeah. In delivering the true meaning of democracy and true meaning of rule of law to our kids. But also the materials, as you mentioned, or both gentlemen mentioned, the materials are very important. But materials should not be boring our kids. They're interested. So when we come back, we'll talk about what kind of materials that we are developing right now and what are the lessons we can learn from other countries about how to use those materials to teach our kids. So don't go away. Stay with us. We'll be back after these messages.